Theodore Robert Cowell was born on November 24, 1946, at the Elizabeth Lund Home for Unwed Mothers in Burlington, Vermont. His mother, Eleanor Louise Cowell, was a young, unmarried woman from a deeply religious Philadelphia family. To shield the family from the social stigma of an illegitimate birth, Ted was raised for his first few years believing his mother was his older sister and his grandparents were his parents. This deception was, honestly, a heavy stone cast into the pond of his early life, creating ripples that would stretch across decades. Even as a small boy, there were unsettling whispers, stories of a strange darkness lurking beneath his seemingly normal exterior. For example, his aunt once woke up to find young Ted had placed kitchen knives around her while she slept. These early years were, you could say, a confusing tapestry of secrets and a manufactured reality that likely warped his sense of identity and trust from the very beginning. He grew up in Tacoma, Washington, after his mother moved them across the country, and married a hospital cook named Johnny Culpepper Bundy. Ted was given his stepfather's last name, becoming Theodore Ted Bundy. On the surface, he was the model son and student. He was shy, intelligent, handsome, well-behaved. He did well in school, was active in his local church youth group, even worked on political campaigns for Republican candidates. As a teenager, he developed a habit of peeping into the windows of strangers' homes, a voyeuristic impulse that signaled a growing detachment from normal social boundaries. He was also an avid consumer of true crime magazines and pulp detective novels, especially those that featured graphic violence and sexual deviance. This fascination with the darker side of human nature was not just a passing interest, it was really a study. He was learning, absorbing the details of how to stalk, how to overpower, and how to get away with the most terrible of acts. Friends from that time would later recall a certain coldness, an inability to truly connect or show genuine empathy, as if he were always playing a part. The precise moment Ted Bundy crossed the line from fantasy to fatal reality remains murky, but authorities now believe his killing spree began in earnest around 1974. Young women, mostly college students, began to disappear in Washington, Oregon with alarming frequency. The pattern was hauntingly consistent. A bright, promising young woman would vanish without a trace. There were no signs of a struggle, no witnesses to an abduction, just an empty space where a vibrant life used to be. The first confirmed victim in this series was Linda Ann Healy, a University of Washington student who was taken from her basement apartment in February 1974. Her disappearance was followed by others, each one a fresh wave of grief and fear that washed over the Pacific Northwest. Bundy's method was as cunning as it was cruel. He was a predator who used his charisma and good looks to lure his victims into a state of false security. He would often feign an injury, wearing a cast on his arm, using crutches, and then ask a young woman for help carrying books, loading something into his Volkswagen Beetle. Who would suspect a handsome, well-dressed man with a seemingly broken arm of having malicious intent? This calculated performance allowed him to get close to his victims, to isolate them, and to overpower them when their guard was down. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing. His chosen hunting grounds were college campuses, busy public places where trust was easily given. The disappearances continued throughout the spring and summer of 1974, creating a climate of immense fear. On July 14, 1974, he committed one of his most brazen attacks at Lake Sammamish State Park, a popular recreation area bustling with people. In broad daylight, he approached multiple women, introducing himself as Ted and asking for help with his sailboat. He successfully abducted two young women, Janice Ott, Denise Naslund, from the crowded park just hours apart. The sheer audacity of these crimes baffled law enforcement. How could one man make two people vanish from the same location on the same day, surrounded by thousands of potential witnesses? The discovery of the skeletal remains of some of his victims in a remote wooded area on Taylor Mountain, east of Seattle, confirmed the community's worst fears. Police had sketches based on witness descriptions from Lake Sammamish of a man named Ted with his arm in a sling, driving a light-colored VW Bug. They had a name, a description, and a vehicle type, yet the man himself remained a ghost. In the fall of 1974, Ted Bundy moved to Salt Lake City to attend law school at the University of Utah, and the wave of terror followed him. Soon after his arrival, young women began disappearing in Utah under circumstances eerily similar to the cases in Washington. The first was Nancy Wilcox, a 16-year-old cheerleader who vanished from Holiday, Utah, in October. A month later, Melissa Smith, the 17-year-old daughter of a local police chief, disappeared after leaving a pizza parlor. Her body was later found in the rugged mountains nearby. The geographical leap made connecting the crimes a significant challenge for law enforcement agencies that, at the time, rarely shared information across state lines. A critical break in the case came in August 1975. A Utah Highway Patrol officer pulled over a Volkswagen Beetle for driving suspiciously in the early morning hours. The driver was the clean-cut law student Ted Bundy. A search of his car revealed a strange collection of items: a crowbar, a face mask, rope, and handcuffs. Later that year, Carol Duranch, a young woman who had survived an abduction attempt in November 1974, identified Bundy in a police lineup as the man who had impersonated a police officer and tried to kidnap her. This positive identification was the first solid piece of evidence linking him directly to one of the crimes. With her testimony, Utah had a case. Bundy was charged with aggravated kidnapping. Meanwhile, forensic evidence began to tie him to murder in Colorado. In February 1976, Ted Bundy stood trial in Utah for the kidnapping of Carol Duranch. He waived his right to a jury, placing his fate in the hands of a single judge. Despite his confident and articulate self-defense, the evidence was compelling. The judge found him guilty and sentenced him to 1 to 15 years in the Utah State Prison. In 1977, extradited to Aspen to face murder charges for Karen Campbell, Bundy acted as his own attorney, gaining access to the courthouse law library. On June 7th, during a recess, he opened a window and leaped from the second story, shedding his civilian clothes and vanishing into Aspen Mountain. The escape was a sensation. A massive manhunt followed. Hundreds of officers, roadblocks, search parties. He survived in the wild, broke into a vacant cabin, but 6 days later was caught in a simple traffic stop, gaunt and disheveled. Back in custody at a more secure facility, he planned a far more intricate escape over months, acquiring a hacksaw blade, sawing through his cell ceiling, hiding the damage with drawings and books. On December 30th, with holiday staffing thin, he crawled through the opening, navigated the crawl space, dropped into an empty apartment, and walked out into the cold night, free again. After his second escape, Bundy made his way across the country, eventually arriving in Tallahassee in early January 1978. He rented a room near FSU under the alias Chris Hagen. For a few days he lived in anonymity, but the dark compulsions that had driven him could not be contained. In the pre-dawn hours of January 15, 1978, Bundy broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at FSU. He moved silently from room to room, unleashing a horrific, savage assault on the sleeping young women inside. In the space of about 15 minutes, he bludgeoned 4 women with a piece of firewood, killing 2 of them, Margaret Bowman, Lisa Levy, and leaving 2 others, Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler, with life-altering injuries. He then fled the sorority house and just a few blocks away broke into a duplex apartment and attacked another student, Cheryl Thomas, leaving her for dead with severe injuries. The campus woke to unimaginable horror. The Chi Omega murder sent a shockwave through Florida. The killer was unknown, no one felt safe. One crucial clue remained, a distinctive double bite mark on Lisa Levy, evidence that would later prove key. Unfazed, Bundy continued. 3 weeks later, on February 9th, he abducted his final victim, a 12-year-old girl named Kimberly Leach, from her middle school in Lake City, a crime of stunning depravity. Bundy's flight ended on February 15, 1978 in Pensacola, Florida. Pulled over in a suspicious car, he gave a false name, but the car was stolen. After a brief struggle, he was in custody. This time, there would be no more escapes. The trial of Ted Bundy for the Chi Omega murders and the murder of Kimberly Leach was a media spectacle, one of the first nationally televised trials, captivating the country. Bundy was handsome, intelligent, articulate, a stark contrast to the monstrous acts alleged. He played to the cameras, smiling, posturing, acting as his own co-counsel, often cross-examining witnesses. The prosecution, led by Jerry Blair, built a powerful case with overwhelming circumstantial and physical evidence. Witnesses placed him near the scene, but the most damning was forensic. Dr. Richard Souveron compared a mold of Bundy's crooked teeth to the bite marks on Lisa Levy.
In high drama, he declared it a perfect match. The teeth in the mold made the marks on the victim. On July 24, 1979, the jury found Bundy guilty on all counts, including 2 murders. Judge Edward D. Cowart, while imposing the death penalty, lamented the waste of humanity, saying, "You'd have made a good lawyer, but you went another way, partner.
For nearly a decade on death row, he filed appeals and granted interviews, coyly speaking in the third person, offering to help profile killers, blaming pornography and a violent media culture, a transparent attempt to deflect responsibility. He confessed to at least 30 murders across 7 states between 1974 and 1978. As the final date neared, his confessions became more frantic. Appeals ended. On January 24, 1989, he was executed in the electric chair. Outside, crowds celebrated, even chanting, "Burn, Bundy, burn," a stark reflection of public vengeance. His death brought some closure, but it could never erase the pain, nor end the questions he left behind. Ted Bundy shattered the myth that monsters look like monsters. He was handsome, he was educated, he was charming, he was the man you would trust, the neighbor you would welcome, the stranger you would help.